Some folks have asked for an update, so I figured before I get some morning chores going, I would try to do a quick one. I don't want to do an hour-long video anymore. When I sent that to some folks, they complained it was too long, so I'll try to do your standard YouTube size video here. So I posted some videos that I made during Snowmageddon. I did not do a follow-up video after that, like the following season, that spring, to show what had survived. But pretty much everything in that video survived except for, I'm trying to think what didn't. Not offhand, I can't think of anything that didn't. What really killed things was I stepped away for a year after having a medical disaster, maybe a year and a half. And stage 5 drought, along with a heat wave that we just had this summer. And I think we've kind of come out of it. The temperatures have broken. We've gotten some rain. So I figured it'd be a good time to show it when everything's not so terrible looking. During that time frame when I was away and during the drought, things died. But it was also neat to see what could live without human intervention, what could thrive even. So we'll continue. I'm just going to do this one garden bed. It starts where my old chicken coop is. And it goes for 150 feet. It's 4 foot wide. I'm probably not going to cover the whole 150 feet. I'm going to start here with some failure. I like to show failure. A lot of gardening videos and stuff you see on social media, they love to talk about how everything's going perfectly wonderful and everything's great, but they never show, or they rarely show, what has completely failed. We've had this year, this tree I was grabbing onto is an American Plum, and it's the last survivor, I think. I think it's going to be the only one survived, and it's terrible. It may not even make it. And it's just simply a sucker that I let grow off of the main tree with a huge trunk. Or for a plum tree, pretty huge. It's been here 8 to 10 years. Never watered it. Not even the first year I put it in the ground. This year's drought, though, I think has finally killed it. I was taking air layerings from it and transplanting them into my other site in East Texas. And after taking so many air layerings, I just let it bud back. And I wanted to dwarf this tree down, kind of reduce its size so I could get some light. So this direction here is west. And I could get some light into this Chickasaw plum, because I want to slowly phase these American plums out and replace them with Chickasaws or Mexican plum or Chickasaw plum, which are native to the cross timbers and these Americans. And just keep a small stand of Americans just to take air layerings from and populate my other farm in East Texas. Just use a small bed of these for like just propagation, like a seed bed, if you will. The wildlife does love the American plum. It's not completely impossible for an American plum to grow here. They have occurred. They even hybridize with the Chickasaw plums. It's just, they're very rare. It's very hard for them to grow, and you can see the drought just destroyed it. You might say that, well, it destroyed this Chickasaw too, but I planted this year. It's really heartbreaking. 3 years in a pot, and then I finally planted it, and it was doing great until about 3 weeks ago. We got a bunch of rain, and I guess it was too much rain. I guess, ironically, it's overwatered, or it might have been disease or whatnot, but I have several pots of these that I can replace this with and get another stand going. It's not a huge deal, just about a year loss of growth. And then you'll notice a bunch of Bermuda grass. That's because this was once a lawn. It did look like a golf course, believe it or not. It was beautiful. When I first moved in, I was obsessed with having a wonderful lawn, like most people are. And I planted Bermuda. I wish I hadn't. And yeah, you can lay down plastic and you can eradicate it, but all the neighbors have Bermuda. And it blows in, it comes in from seed, and I've eradicated it several times in several places only to have it come back. And so I now just manage it the way I would any invasive species and just try to keep it suppressed as much as possible. You're going to see plenty of that, but within that you'll see some natives. You'll see some horse herb and these little yellow flowers. The pollinators do love them. It's a wonderful ground cover. Doesn't get much more than about 8 inches, 6 inches tall. Asparagus. This is all heritage asparagus, a mix of some kind of purple night, Jersey, Mary Washington. It's in a raised bed. When I first got started, I was worried about asparagus becoming invasive, and it turned out to be a fear that wasn't necessary. In East Texas, it will just spread like wildfire, but Here it's just too dry, and you don't really have to worry about it being an invasive. I would not advise putting it in a raised bed. I would just put it in the ground. So this bed here is pretty much all I'm going to cover. It probably goes, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably about 50 feet, and it's about 4 foot wide. It's hard to tell because since I've built this bed and I've built structures to try to slow the water runoff, I've been able to collect sediment. But the soil here I wouldn't even call it soil. I should have brought a pickaxe with me, but it's basically like caliche with little bits of sand and clay mixed in, almost no organic matter. So most of this was an experiment. I've never done permaculture style regenerative no-till farming before. I was trying to learn. I wanted to see what it could actually do. I've done more so-called traditional, where you till and you put out, fertilizer. I've always used organic fertilizer. I've never done chemicals or whatnot, but always did the more traditional straight rows tilling method. So what I did here is I just laid down layers upon layers of mulch, grass clippings, straw, compost over the last 3 or 4 years. When I needed to plant something in it, I did dig a hole, dug out all the rocks, and backfilled that with some higher quality, well-drained soil, but only in the area that I needed to dig in to put in the plant, no bigger than that. And I tried to stick with natives or naturalized plants that produce food that are human edible. So we'll see if I succeeded in that. The mosquitoes are out today. Okay, so this is a native blackberry, although I used a cultivated variety. This is thornless blackberry. Why thornless? Well, it's just easier to harvest. Now, this particular blackberry was planted this year because I lost one during the winter. I keep a certain stock of these, and this is something you should do for any farm. You should always have a stock ready to take care of losses and deaths, because plants have a lifespan and they die back and they get disease. So if you want to maintain your farm, you always have to have a certain stock ready for rotation. One downside of a drought with blackberries is that if it's severe drought, you can lose the crop for that year, but then they send out the canes that year that will produce fruit for the following year. The growth on those canes is going to be stunted because of the drought. It's exactly what we got here. So we lost the crop for this year on these particular blackberries. The soil is just not very good, and it's so hot and dry. And the supplemental water, I'll give a word on that in a minute. I try to not give supplemental water as much as possible. So next year's crop is going to be greatly reduced. Hopefully we get good rain so we get better canes for the following year. What you see here, this dead thing, why is it dead? I have no idea. It's been thriving the whole time I've ever had it here, for about 2 or 3 years. It's just lemon balm. I intercrop herbs, various types of herbs in with crops for pest repellents and attractors for pollinators and various reasons. Sometimes it's for nitrogen fixing. So on this particular one, I don't know why, but I think it makes sense to put it here. It is still alive. You can see it's sprouting back, a little bit of green down there, and it's done that. It's died back and come back, and it's dropped loads of seeds, and they always grow and spread and sprout. So in here you'll see I've got a sucker or a runner for a passion flower, maypop passion flower, and you'll see that maypop passion flower pretty much everywhere. And unless it interferes with something, I just pretty much let it grow wherever it wants. And like you just saw, if it's starting to interfere, if it's going to start wrapping around something, I'll just lay it on the ground and make it go somewhere else instead of pulling it out. You'll see a native morning glory. They attract pollinators, and I think I've done some research on the edibility of these, and I think there's some archaeological records of Native Americans eating them, but I believe they may have a hallucinogenic effect, or the seeds might, but don't quote me on any of this. I'm doing this offhand. So this little heart-shaped type leaf produces like a purple, almost trumpet-shaped flower. And you see more maypops, more blackberry. This guy did pretty good. He got one cane that went pretty good, so we'll see. And I let the morning glory just wrap up. The secret to growing in Texas, especially this bed, which gets sun starting at like 9 o'clock in the morning and it doesn't stop until the sun goes down, is shade. So these little vines and stuff, again, unless it's really killing something, I leave them. It provides shade. I do believe this morning glory fixes nitrogen. It enriches the soil. You can tell a lot by what sprouts in your soil natively, because that will, what sprouts is, like if you have poor soil, you'll have plants that grow well in poor soil, and you can tell what you got going on with your fertilizer situation in your soil just by examining the plants that come up. Let's see, I've got Croton monanthaginus, I believe is how you pronounce it. Prairie tea. These are domesticated, of course. This is Georgia collard. I got another one here. I used to grow tree collards, and in my Snowmageddon video, I talk about the tree collards. The Richmond's purple tree collards all bit the dust, but the green tree collards that I got, that were field-grown tree collards from Minnesota, they survived the Snowmageddon only to die that following summer. The tree collards take a lot of water, but these Georgia collards don't, and they survive the winters way better. They produce, in my opinion, more food. If you're growing in this area, I would not even mess with tree collards. I would just go with those. Very hardy. You can see it's chewed up with bugs right now. I don't use any pesticides. I let the bugs eat pretty much, unless I need to harvest. And then I will come and hand pick them off if I have to reduce them. But I think I read somewhere that letting your plants get stressed like this actually can increase their nutrient content. And I'm largely growing this one here for seeds. So, I mean, we'd have harvested it for food. It was actually double the height at some point. But right now I don't need the food, so I let the bugs eat. If you start eliminating pests, then you eliminate the food source for their predators, and you starve out the predators, and then there's less predators, and then the prey comes back, but there's no predators to eat them, and you throw things out of balance. So again, I observe, unless it gets to where the whole plant's going to die, I largely let it do its business. So I mentioned the croton. You'll see here a ground cherry. I'm trying to make a switch, grow less tomato, grow more ground cherry. The jury's still out whether or not it really makes sense. These ground cherries take more water than I thought they would. And they do produce lots of fruit, but I don't know if the poundage is equivalent to what I get out of a tomato. The flavor is delicious. It's like a lemon and a tomato crossed. In the back here, I have goji berry. You see little flowers there, and the pollinators love it. I've been noticing very few bees this year with the drought, but I did see a good turnout on these goji berry flowers. I was trying to kill them. There's multiple reasons. The fruit is hard to harvest. They don't produce a lot. I don't particularly like the taste. They're not native. So, I've been really hard on them, but they just keep coming back, and they just keep getting bigger, and they just keep spreading. I keep having to dig up runners, and which is, if you're trying to have a farm, if you're trying to produce excess, then maybe that's a good crop. But yeah, they seem unkillable. And they pretty much all summer look miserable, and then we get a rain in the fall, and then they'll just come back. I got some oregano in here. Let's see. In the back, I have added Jerusalem artichoke. So this back behind the garden bed, which starts right around here to the fence, it's about the width of a push mower. You can see I dump leaves and I dump grass clippings and everything back here. And I'm going to have, right here is the very edge of the garden bed. Right about, let's see, I'm trying to see it in the camera. Right about there. And along the very edge is where I'm going to plant a whole line of Jerusalem artichokes. I use the Jerusalems kind of a way to till without tilling. Their tubers go down, expand, and die off, and it leaves organic matter in the soil. And of course, earthworms also help. So I'm using it to try to enrich this garden bed and maybe provide some shade. And you can see that the maypop is spread back there. I'm going to get this guy. That, I believe, is a caterpillar of the Gulf Coast fritillary butterfly. I think that's correct. And yeah, there's the butterfly right there. The only place that their larvae can grow or be laid is on the maypop. I believe they migrate from the Gulf up here, seeking out maypops to have their babies. So, and I've just got tons of those butterflies all over the place. So, see in the background, hopefully. Another maypop. So you see this has got an artificial trellis, and this is all done to try to provide some shade to this bed. As I mentioned, the secret to growing in this part of Texas, and probably like Las Vegas, is going to be shade. In an earlier video, I had a chard in the snow that was covered, and this is it. It lived through the Snowmageddon, died this summer. It was probably like 3 years old, that chard, 2 or 3 years old, and we harvested it for a while, but I guess it finally bit the dust. Another goji berry. There's my aloe vera that I need to get out of this pile. I was waiting for it to cool off. I'm going to take these pups and pot them up separately, and probably pot up this big guy. The aloe vera grows great here. You just got to keep it from freezing is all. But you can pretty much put it in a pot and stick it outside. It loves this climate, except for the freezing. Okay, yeah, you see remnants of when I tried to get rid of the Bermuda. I tried to replace it with buffalo grass, which is native here. It only grows like 6 to 8 inches tall. You don't have to mow it. It's beautiful. It turns like a reddish color in the fall. I highly advise you grow that or little blue stem instead of Bermuda grass. So you see this here has got, this hearse herb is not edible as far as I'm aware, but the wildlife loves it. It's a great ground cover, suppresses the grass. You can see I don't have Bermuda over here, or at least very little. You can see I got little bits of it creeping in. Got some more prairie tea mixed in there, another little goji berry. Unsuccessful planting of a quince, and a successful planting of a quince. Right here. All that horse herb. Sunflowers. Why do I have these sunflowers here? Well, they provide shade. They provide food for pollinators late in the summer when there's very few places for them to get food. Their roots provide a access route for water to seep into the soil. They fixate nitrogen. When they die, I just cut them off at the base and lay them down, and they mulch, and their roots die off in the soil, providing organic matter. Grow these things. The leaves are edible, the petals are edible, the seeds are edible, and I do believe even on this species the root is edible. Okay, got another blackberry in here, or thornless blackberry. I had some thyme, got too wet, and a ground cherry that it's holding on, but it's not doing great. I'm gonna get that out of there. It's a passion flower. Don't want it growing around my ground cherry. It seems to like being mixed in with this horser. I guess it's the shade. And then we finish with some hybrid asparagus, not GMO. It's been hybridized. I don't really remember offhand how many species are in it. Oh, look at this butterfly. This is not. Oh, there you go. Sorry, it doesn't flower. Oh, I scared him. Okay. And this flower is a lantana. It's the when you go buy lantana, you can get all kinds of cultivated varieties of lantana. So if you're interested in making sure that the lantana you have is the same as the wild lantana that grows native in your area, you got to find a grower that knows where they're sourcing their lantana from and knows that it's that particular type of lantana. That is Texas lantana. That is native to this area. You see more of these sunflowers. Oh, and they're just beautiful too. I mean, gorgeous. Let's see here. And behind I have some Jerusalem artichoke. Everywhere you're going to find native grasses and prairie tea and any edibles, native edibles. More Jerusalem artichoke behind this asparagus. I guess all the leaves are gone on this guy. I think I have a native purslane or a naturalized one in the yard. Gotta find it. I'm not going to go into this garden bed There's a lot to go into, but I will mention this right here. Red Malabar spinach. This is integral to my food plan for this place. It thrives in extreme heat. It's the one plant that when it gets hotter, it almost seems to do better. Every part of it, the stem, the leaves, everything is edible. I'll fix that later. Self-seeds, seeds over winter and come back in the spring, so it's low maintenance. My plan is at the base of every single one of these trees is going to have one to many Malabar spinach, and I've gotten started with this tree. It's all inside this garden bed. I've got it on this tree, had it on that tree last year, but this year it grew, but it died because of the drought. So eventually I should have it everywhere, and I'll have food I won't know what to do with. But last thing I'll show you, this flower. Maybe some of you know what the genus and species of this is. I grew up looking at this flower as a kid. I don't see it around a lot anymore, but I know it is. I know it's not like endangered or nothing. I just haven't had any in this yard. But it's now growing in several places. Pretty little blue flower. If I remember right, when you pull this stem, a clear latex comes out. So I don't think it has a particularly good smell or any smell really, but the pollinators love it. It is, I'm pretty certain it is native. I have looked up the genus and species before. I just don't know it offhand, and I've confirmed that it's native. But maybe some of you know it. But I think it's wonderful. I think it's pretty. And I'm glad it finally showed up in my yard. So there we go. Now it's good and sunny and hot. I'm gonna get on my chores. Thank you.